Good. I do. Have you been using any of the Guild Wars 1 art as inspiration for the Guild Wars 2 stuff? Notably the armor and stuff. Like you were talking about how you were progressing armor. Have you been doing any of that? Like as time went on, has the armor shifted and you can identify it? Or
Well, I don't know if we have anything evolution so directly tied like that. I mean, of course, there is coming up with what is needed for the game and so forth, but no, I don't know that we would necessarily say we have something directly tied. Like I don't know that that really applies. It's 250 years later, and so. One of the things I suppose with evolution is that we would sort of do is more practical than theoretical, is that now that we have, some extra polys and extra space, we can build out that belt or that really intricate sash or that kind of mechanism that's on the armor that would not have been built and redefined the same way in previous GW1 because we wouldn't been able to pull it off. So yeah, it's just we have more tools to play with, and so I guess the evolution isn't necessarily a particularly theoretical or a lore thing, but more of a, as far as I'm concerned, a practical thing. Is like, yeah, I can put that belt in there now with that really cool belt buckle, and make that really stand out and a feature, whereas I wouldn't have the resolution before. So I don't know if that really answers your question like you'd like. I'm sorry.
Is it difficult to design weapons and different items to match the armor?
Sometimes. Depends on the armor or the set. Sometimes it just works out better, and sometimes it's just a big headache.
When you guys are asked to make a piece of art, does the order come in as we needed this set of armor for this race, or does it come in as here's a story, could you storyboard it for us?
It's kind of both actually. In terms of depending on where it's coming from, there's either a hardcore list Excel sheet that I'm looking at that has like all these spaces I gotta go check mark everything. Or it can come directly from the lore side, and it's a story, and it's a blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. I'm going to draw that. So it kind of comes from both sides. So, or it's like something kicks off in our art director's brain, and then he's like, we got to do this. And then all of a sudden, it's an awesome illustration, and all of a sudden, we were like, okay, so how are we going to fit that in our story? It works always. It doesn't take much for us to like get going on art. I mean, we will take any little bit to and expand upon it. So, I hope that answers the question. So,
I remember you previously mentioning that you like putting spikes on armor because they're really badass and things like that. And well, it actually just
I take it you're talking to me, right?
Yes, whoever said it, I can't remember. I just when it comes to art and the armors that have things coming off of them, is clipping like a really big issue? And like, have you run into that a lot when it comes to armor making?
You said the C word. That's my department. It is what?
I don't really care about clipping, to be honest.
And he makes our life miserable for that. We have to pull off what he designs. Good golly. So, yeah, there's always an issue with clipping. Unfortunately, we always try to minimize what we can, but given that we're trying for the variety that we have, and, you put on your guild cape, you put on all this, you wear, you have to predict that the armor that you're building right now, that, like, for example, if we were building an armor in Gwen, that armor now has to be piecemealed to work with everything else that was shipped since Prophecies. So you can imagine those pieces, unless you're going to start really getting cliche and being the same kind of shape, is at some point going to clip with some other armor somehow. And so we try in general. We had some general rules for GW1 and so forth, like the elementalists always for the hips on down flowed away from the body. They didn't go up on the waist seam, whereas warriors could go up on the waist seam, because otherwise you would have a coat that comes down like this and a pant that comes down like this, and all of a sudden you'd have this like really bad clipping. So we tried to minimize it by how we put everything together, but unfortunately there's only so much we can do, and we figure, you know what, if it looks really good when it's walking, when it's running, and the major fight, you know, just like a regular sort of movement, then okay, we'll try our best.
Okay. Can you each of you talk about one of the most rewarding aspects of doing concept art for games? We talked about challenges. Now let's talk about what you find most rewarding.
Actually, one of my favorite things is actually going in game and seeing what people are wearing. And if I happen to design and build what they're wearing, that's really rewarding. It's like, oh, you did like it. You did. Thank goodness. Because it's always you're designing fashion. It's a fad, and it could be in one day or out the next. And so actually seeing that what you're creating is what people are wanting in the game, I would say is probably really rewarding. Other than, the fun of building it, it actually is really fun to do all the details, because I'm OCD and I'm really detail oriented. But yeah, seeing that people really enjoy what you're doing, that you love to do as a job, that's really rewarding.
Well, mine's probably somewhat selfish. I mean, I like getting into the game and just seeing it in its element and seeing how well it integrates with the world as a whole and contributes to making it feel like a real immersive environment. And I enjoy it when I can share it with people too, but I really just like being in there and kind of seeing it in the flesh. It's really simple, but simple pleasures.
I guess for me, my greatest reward is that I'm actually doing art, and I love to do art. And the fact of the matter is, I get to be part of this great thing that we're trying to do, which is like trying to make a game called Guild Wars and try to make it as the best game ever. It's the best looking game ever, at least for my part. But yeah, just like being part of something bigger, being like a small part and doing your job well and to the best of your ability, and then trying to push yourself to go further even more. That's quite a rewarding experience for me whenever I sit down and think about it. So.
Okay, we're gonna start wrapping it up. So if anyone has any other questions, any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you all to our awesome art team up here for taking time out of your day, out of your weekend to talk to us.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
And coming up, we've got a book signing at 4:30. So if you'd all like to come back for that, please do. And thanks again to our artist.